Goblin Tales of Lancashire by James Bowker, narrated by Malc Cowle. The Spectral Cat. Long, long ago, so long in fact, that the date has been lost in obscurity, the piously inclined inhabitants of the then thickly wooded and wild country, stretching from the sea-coast to Rivington, Pike and Horton, determined to erect a church at Whittleby Woods, and a site having been selected, the first stone was laid with all the ceremony due to so important and solemn a proceeding. Assisted by the labourers, as well as by the contributions of the faithful, the good priest was in high spirits, and as the close of the first day had seen the foundations set out and goodly piles of materials brought upon the ground, ready for the future, he fell asleep, congratulating himself upon having lived long enough to see the wish of his heart gratified. What was his surprise, however, when, after rising at the break of day, and immediately rushing to his window to gaze upon the work, he could not perceive either foundation or pile of stone, the field in which he expected to observe the promising outline being as green and showing as few marks of disturbance as the neighbouring ones. "Surely I must have been dreaming," said the good man, as he stood with rueful eyes at the little casement, "for there are not any signs either of the gifts or the labours of the pious sons of the church." In this puzzled frame of mind, and with a heavy sigh, he once more courted sleep. He had not slumbered long, however, when loud knocks at the door of his dwelling and lusty cries for Father Ambrose disturbed him. Hastily attiring himself, he descended, to find a concourse of people assembled in front of the house, and no sooner had he opened the door than a mason cried out, "Father Ambrose, where are the foundations we laid yesterday, and where is the stone from the quarry?" "Then I did not simply dream that I had blessed the site," said the old man inquiringly, upon which there was a shout of laughter, and a sturdy young fellow asked, "And I did not dream that I carted 6 loads from the quarry?" "Thou lad's had hand in it," said a labourer, "for it feels as if foot had never stepped in it." The priest and his people at once set off to inspect the site, and sure enough it was in the state described by the mason, cowslips and buttercups decking the expanse of green, which took different shades as the zephyr swept over it. "Well, I'm fair capped," said a grey-headed old farmer. "I've had things stone afore to-day, but they ain't generally been things with feathers on, and good to eat, and not the foundations of a church. The world's getting terrible wicked. We's have to be looking out for another Noah's flood, I warrant." A peal of laughter followed this sally, but Father Ambrose, who was in no mood for mirth, sternly remarked, "There is something here which savoureth of the doings of Beelzebub," and then he sadly turned away, leaving the small crowd of gossips speculating upon the events of the night. Before the father reached his dwelling, however, he heard his name called by a rustic who was running along the road. "Father Ambrose," cried the panting messenger, "here's the strangest thing happened at Leyland. The foundations of a church and all sorts of building materials have been laid in a field during the night, and Adam the miller is vowing vengeance against you for having trespassed on his land." The priest at once returned to the little crowd of people, who still were gaping at the field from which all signs of labour had been so wonderfully removed, and bade the messenger repeat the strange story, which he did at somewhat greater length, becoming loquacious in the presence of his equals, for he enjoyed their looks of astonishment. When the astounding narrative had been told, the crowd at once started for Leyland, their pastor promising to follow after he had fortified himself with breakfast. When the good man reached the village, he had no need to inquire which was Adam the miller's field, for he saw the crowd gathered in a rich-looking meadow. As he opened the gate, Adam met him, and without ceremony at once accused him of having taken possession of his field. "Peace, Adam," said the priest. "The field hath been taken not by me, but by a higher power, either good or evil. I fear the latter." And he made his way to the people. True enough, the foundations were laid as at Whittle, and even the mortar was ready for the masons. "I am loath to think that this is a sorry jest of the evil one," said Father Ambrose. "Ye must help me to outwit him, and to give him his labour for his pains. Let each one carry what he can, and doubtless Adam will be glad to cart the remainder," a proposition the burly miller agreed to at once. Accordingly, each of the people walked off with a piece of wood, and Adam started for his team. Before long the field was cleared, and ere sunset the foundations were again laid in the original place, and a goodly piece of wall had been built. Grown wise by experience, the priest selected 2 men to watch the place during the night. Naturally enough, these worthies, who by no means liked the task, but were afraid to decline it, determined to make themselves as comfortable as they could under the circumstances. They therefore carried to the place a quantity of food and drink, and a number of empty sacks, with which they constructed an impromptu couch near the blazing wood fire. Notwithstanding the seductive influence of the liquor, they were not troubled with much company, for the few people who resided in the vicinity did not care to remain out of doors late, after what Father Ambrose had said as to the proceeding having been a joke of Satan's. The priest, however, came to see the men, and after giving them his blessing and a few words of advice, he left them to whatever the night might bring forth. No sooner had he gone than the watchers put up some boards to shield them from the wind, and drawing near to the cheerful fire, they began to partake of a homely but plentiful supper. Considering how requisite it was that they should be in possession of all their wits, perhaps it would have been better had not a large bottle been in such frequent requisitions, for soon after the meal was ended, what with the effects of the by no means weak potion, the warmth and odour sent forth by the crackling logs, and the musical moaning of the wind in the branches overhead, they began to feel drowsy, to mutter complaints against the hardship of their lot, and to look longingly upon the heap of sacks. "If out comes," said the oldest of the 2, "one can see it as well as 2, and can wacken t'other. Therefore I'm in for a nod," and he at once flung himself upon the rude bed. "Well," said the younger one, who was perched upon a log close to the fire, "have thy own way, and thou'll live longer, but as wakken thee soon, and have a doze mysen. That's fair, isn't it?" To this question there was no response, for the old man was already asleep. The younger one immediately reached the huge bottle, and after drinking a hearty draught from it, placed it within reach, saying as he did so, "I'm noan frightened of thee, as how it is. Thou art not Beelzebub, art thou?" Before long he bowed his head upon his hands, and gazing into the fire, gave way to a pleasant train of reflections, in which the miller's daughter played a by no means unimportant part. In a little while he too began to doze and nod, and the ideas and thronging fancies soon gave way to equally delightful dreams. Day was breaking when the pair awoke. The fire was out, and the noisy birds were chirruping their welcome to the sun. For a while the watchers stared at each other with well-acted surprise. "I'm frightened thou's overslept this hell," said the young fellow, "and really I do think as I've been nodding a bit mysen." And then as he turned round, "Why, it's gone again, Jacob, old lad. The foundation and the walls and all the lots of stones are off to Leyland again." The field was again clear, grass and meadow flowers covering its expanse, and after a long conference the pair determined that the best course for them to pursue would be that of immediately confessing to Father Ambrose that they had been asleep. Accordingly they wended their way to his house, and having succeeded in arousing him and getting him to the door, the young man informed him that once more the foundations were missing. "What took them?" asked the priest, to which awkward query the old man replied that they did not see anything. "Then you slept, did you?" asked the father. "Well," said the young man, "we did nod a minute or two, but we were tired with watching so closely, and you see, that as can carry the foundations of a church away cannot have much trouble in sending unlearned chaps like Jacob and me to sleep again our will." This ended the colloquy, for Father Ambrose laughed heartily at the ready answer. Shortly afterwards, as on the preceding day, the messenger from Leyland arrived with tidings that the walls had again appeared in Adam's Field. Again they were carted back and placed in their original position, and once more was a watch set, the priest taking the precaution of remaining with the men until near upon midnight. Almost directly after he had left the field, one of the watchers suddenly started from his seat and cried, "See ye yonder? There's summat wick." Both men gazed intently and saw a huge cat with great unearthly-looking eyes and a tail with a barbed end. Without any seeming difficulty, this terrible animal took up a large stone and hopped off with it, returning almost immediately for another. This strange performance went on for some time, the two observers being nearly petrified by terror. But at length the younger one said, "I'm like to put a stop to yon work, or he'll say we've been sleeping again," and seizing a large piece of wood he crept down the field, the old man following closely behind. When he reached the cat, which took no notice of his approach, he lifted his cudgel and struck the animal a heavy blow on its head. Before he'd time to repeat it, however, the cat, with a piercing scream, sprang upon him, flung him to the ground, and fixed its teeth in his throat. The old man at once fled for the priest. When he returned with him, cat, foundations, and materials were gone, but the dead body of the poor watcher was there, with glazed eyes, gazing at the pitiless stars. After this terrible example of the power of the fiendish labourer, it was not considered advisable to attempt a third removal, and the building was proceeded with upon the site at Leyland, chosen by the Spectre. The present parish church covers the place long occupied by the original building, and although the actors in this story passed away centuries ago, a correct likeness of the cat has been preserved, and may be seen by the sceptical. Footnote: the depiction of the cat is a work of art which was one of the gargoyles of the old building, and was purchased by Mr. Farrington, the father of the present lady of the manor, when the church was rebuilt. It bore the name of the Capstone. Another version of this tradition, of but limited circulation, and little known even in the immediate locality, credits an angel with the removal of the foundations, and with the utterance of the following anything but angelic strain: "Here I have placed thee, and here shalt thou stand, and thou shalt be called the Church of Leyland."